Hello and a warm welcome from my side. Today we're gonna discuss more insights into we're gonna have more insights into the insurance industry. Gonna wait 1 or 2 minutes before we start. As long as we wait for all participants. If you have any questions, please use the F&A function of Zoom. Please send us your feedback, your questions, and we're gonna answer your questions right during the webinar. Maybe we're gonna start with the general introduction. Yes, today we have the GEM sector special insurance. We started in 2020 with analyzing the sustainability reporting. Since then, we have analyzed more than 1,300 reports of 500 companies, 70 industries in 4 continents. So we have a very good overview and a very good database where the current status quo of the sustainability reporting is. Also in 2024, we analyzed more than 190 reports from several companies from DAX, MDAX, SDAX, and some GEM selected companies. How we do our research and analysis, we translated the criteria of several providers like EFRAG, IFRS, GRI into more than 1,000 questions with more than 5,000 variabilities. We are looking into the annual reports as well as into the ESG reports to get the full picture of the sustainability reporting of the companies and to ensure the quality of our data and analysis. We have a 3-step process. So we have in first step is that analyst is doing his research, checking the reporting. A second analyst is doing the same job, and if they have the same outcome, everything is fine. If there's a big difference between analyst 1 and analyst 2, we have the so-called auditing to ensure that we don't have any mistakes or faults in our analysis. With this, I'm happy to hand over to you, Ariane. And so why did you select the insurance sector for today's webinar?
The insurance sector is important for many reasons. Some of the reasons I show on the next slide, if you display, Claudius, please. Next one. What the numbers show, they stem from the statistical yearbook and the German association GDV, and they show that the insurance sector bears a special responsibility due to its wide reach and influence on financial and social stability. Why financial and social stability? The first reason is the great numbers of policies, 488 million policies, which the industry offers to protect risks and give insurance for private household as well as companies. And if you look at the very broad product range, you have pension insurances, occupational disability insurances, liability insurances, homeowners and household contents insurances, as well as special industrial products such as cyber and business closure insurance or the D&O insurance. A wide spectrum of different insurance services, and the number shows how important it is. If you think of your insurance policies you might hold yourself, you see that there will be several. The next reason is that the insurance company in Germany, and please go back once more, I was not that fast, Claudius, is a very important employee in Germany with over 470 employees in the industry. And it also counts as the biggest institutional investor, investing 1 trillion euro, and is highly responsible for the shift to a sustainable economy, which is the overall aim of the European Union. Now we can go on, Claudius. Showing the second reason. Due to those numbers I just showed, we can see that insurers have a dual role when it comes to sustainability. So on the left side, you see they are a company themselves, so they can benefit strategically from reporting according to the measure to manage principle, and also build trust with other stakeholders and reduce the number of spontaneous requests for information. On the other hand, they are stakeholders themselves, financing the Green Deal by channeling capital into the sustainable restructuring of the economy, as I just said before, by pointing out the enormous amount of investments this industry is responsible for. You have pointed out that we analyze the annual report and the separate report. And if you go to the next slide, Claudius, I want to make sure, because it's not always really clear why we focus that much on sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting, especially for the insurance companies, is more than documented responsibility. It is not only part of corporate communication, but is also an expression of a future-oriented investment strategy. So very important documents, and since we always look at the recent publication, our data reflects the status quo as it is documented in these reporting formats. If we talk about the insurance sector, we have to keep in mind that it is a highly regulated sector. Coming from the European Green Deal, we have a lot of different regulations, but also international programs to which the insurance companies can commit to. And what you see here is the principles of sustainable insurance. And we chose this program because all of the companies we are talking about today have agreed to those 4 principles. They come from the UN Environment Program and are called the Finance Initiative, UNEP, and the 4 principles comprise integration of sustainability aspects into decision-making. That means that insurers are committed to include sustainability into their corporate strategy, into their risk management, into product development, claims handling, distribution, and investment management. The second principle says that a strong cooperation with customers and business partners is very important to manage risks together and develop solutions. The third one is kind of building up on this, talking about the collaboration with governments and key stakeholders. And it's all about promoting a broad social commitment to sustainability. And the fourth, responsibility and transparency. So insurance companies commit, when they follow the principle, to disclose their sustainability management practices regularly and transparently. You see the bubble on the left side, PSI. Every time we think that data we show you is connected to those 4 principles, you will see this little bubble linking it to the 4 principles. And what we also wanted to point out, not only that all of the 10 insurance companies I'm going to show you on the next slide are part of this initiative has grown from 2012, when it was founded by only 30 founding members, up to today, it has now almost 300 members worldwide, including 168 insurance companies and 112 supporting institutions, such as regulators and civil society organizations. If you think about the slide I just showed you beforehand, you will see how all the information is intertwined and plays an important role when we look at the data of the insurance sector, and why we have to look at the data from different perspectives. Next slide, please. Next. When we talk about the results for the insurance sector, we talk about the results for 10 companies who are part of our GEM All sample of this year, 194 companies in total. And we look at a spectrum of companies who represent specialized, which represent broader insurance company, as well as specialized companies in Rückversicherung. Now I lost the word. Claudius, can you help me with that? Reinsurers, I got it. And we have a very international sample of broad-based insurance group. Who does belong to this is the Aegon, Allianz, Assicurazioni Generali, AXA, Hannover Rück, Münchner Rück, PZU from Poland, Talanx, Wüstenrot und Württembergische, and the Zurich Insurance Group. The reports we had available for the samples, you can see here on display. In total, we had 366 reports in our sample, which is approximately 2 reports per company. For the insurance sector, we had a total of 16 reports, which averages out to 1.6 reports per company, which is kind of what we experienced in our overall sample, with some companies only publishing 1 report, but most of them accompanying their reporting in the annual report with a separate reporting format. Next slide. What we show you here is the amount of sustainability information included in the annual report. So last year we had 41 pages in median. Median is an average number which is cleared of extremes. And this year it was 67 pages. So the amount of pages is already rising tremendously. And if we look at the different sectors we have analyzed so far, you can see that the insurance sector has the second most broad reporting in our sector specials with 103 pages. Only the banking sector has more pages than the insurance companies.
Ariane, we have a question. Why is the number of pages in the annual report a crucial factor?
With CSRD, sustainability information is supposed to go into the annual report to connect financial and non-financial or sustainability information, since this only gives a broad picture of the performance of a company. At the moment, we are asked quite often by different companies, oh, how many pages will this be in the future? Do I need to reduce or do I need to enlarge my reporting? And by giving out this number and connecting it to a performance score, we try to show how many pages are already being reported and what kind of score you can reach, because it's not only about the scope of pages, but also on the density and detail of information. And this is what we will take a look at on the next slide. This slide answers that scope is not everything, and not only an indicator for high reporting quality. The sector score is yellow, GEM All score is black, and you can see that the sector score reaches 48 out of 100 points, which is only 3 points above GEM average. And below you find those points sorted into our quartiles. We took the spectrum of 100 points and divided it by 4 to have a theoretical approach to the scores. And you can see the average is clearly is in the second lowest quartile, but already on the way to the third quartile. The best in class already reaches the first quartile, whereas the last in class is on the edge from the first to the second quartile. The next, or the right side shows you the distribution of our sample in this spectrum, because average and best in class, last in class only gives you a picture of extremes or everything averaged out. We wanted to include an empirical approach to this. And you can see that we only have one high performer, but a lot of companies being in what we called a solid spectrum, 4 in the mid-range and 3 in the rising category. And we also have 2 low performers who still have a lot of work to do to not only make their reporting more transparent. Think about, that's why we included the bubble PSI, Principles of Sustainable Insurance here, because companies have committed to regularly and transparent report on sustainability. So there's a little bit of work to do, but you can also see that in the light of ESRS, there will be a lot of requirements which still need to be fulfilled. Claudius.
Is there any relation between the performance and the size of the company, or whether they are more general insurers or very specialized insurers?
We have evaluated correlations between company size and scoring in general, as well as sector aligning and top scores or scorings. And we can only see that there is a little effect when it comes to regulations of sectors. Those have a little bit higher scores, but not in general when it comes to size or other KPIs we have taken into consideration.
Okay, thanks.
So what I want to point out here is that scope is not necessarily an indicator for high quality. When it comes to quality reporting, it's all about how well the reports are structured, whether they convey relevant information clearly and comprehensible, and if they give you proof of what they say or tell you the source from where they drew their information. This I want you to keep in mind when we look at other results now in the following webinar, because that's one of the main diagnostics we came to when we analyzed our data. Next slide, please. Presenting you proudly the top scorer in insurance. They come from Poland this year. It's PZU. And this company was already part of the GEM sample in 2022 when we have analyzed the WIG 20 in Poland. And back then already the company achieved a top scorer position, but also this year, not only in the insurance sample, but also in the GEM selected segment. So you can see that this is a company which gives an overall good impression on high quality reporting. Although we have to say, and that's something you will see, that that does not mean that all aspects are perfect in the report, but it's a sample company to get a broad picture of what we were searching for and what we're taking a look at. And if you go from the details back to this report, you get more concrete examples. Next slide, please. The two results I want to show now is connected to the core responsibilities of the insurance industry. I already talked about the double role, the role as a company and the role as an investor, but that translates into 3 core responsibilities. One is the responsibility for own operations and the implementation of sustainable business practices. This could include reducing the ecological footprint or green nudging that's affecting the product categories by promoting sustainable decisions and actions from clients in product design and claim management. And it can also encourage environmental conscious decisions. The role as a risk manager is the responsibility of insurers to identify and assess sustainability-related risks, and keep in mind they offer policies that protect policyholders from the ever-changing and diverse risks, as well as the whole part of underwriting. And then we come to the role as investors, as I already pointed out, in line with EU taxonomy and overarching sustainability goals of the European Union. They are an important investor, which plays an important role in the economic transformation towards sustainability. And I would like to take a look now at insurers as investors. Please show us the next slide, Claudius. Sorry. On the left side, you see the overall score for the industry's average on disclosing sustainable financial practices in their reporting. They reach 70%, which is slightly below the overall average of all companies analyzed. On the right side, you see details in which we want to show you some frequencies and some kind of data we were looking for. So one part would be the share of revenue from sustainable products or services. And here we have only 4 out of 10 companies who report in more detail on the proportion of revenue derived from sustainable products and services. We think this key figure is crucial for assessing the extent to which insurers are gearing their business towards sustainability activities. That's why we point this result out here as one of the expectations which can be connected to the core role of the companies being an investor. The second KPI is the capital expenditure, CapEx, for sustainable activities. This is a key figure which provides information on how committed a company is to invest in long-term transformation towards sustainability and aligning its business strategy with future-proof, environmentally conscious projects. Here we have only 4 companies who go in more detail and report on this. Third KPI is the operating expenditures, OpEx, on sustainable assets, And this is a key figure which shows how much expenditure is incurred in operations to maintain and promote sustainable assets. Roddy has pointed out how important this is for the insurance sector. And here we have only 1 company who reports in more detail on those operating expenses. We also looked if there are different other KPIs which could enhance the situation for the companies in more detail. So we look for other sustainable metrics. And here we have 3 companies who report on additional sustainability metrics and give here additional individual information. What we can point out here is that the current reporting gaps in the area of sustainable investment show that many insurers have not yet fully established the transparency they have obliged to when they follow the principles of sustainable insurance, as we think that's why we integrated the bubble on the right side. Claudius.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Could you give some or an example for other sustainable metrics?
I have to provide this later on because we had different aspects which were reported here and I have not memorized them. I'm sorry.
Okay. Next slide.
Yes, please. The next slide is supposed to enhance the role of insurers as risk managers for their clients. And we have different regulations which could play a role here. One is the Insurance Distribution Directive, IDD. And then we have the how's it called, the Transparency Act, TAC, if I'm correct, which organize how sustainability is integrated in marketing, in distribution, and you see that if you look at the score of consumers and end users on the left side, in total, our insurance companies reach 41% of all possible points, which is slightly above the overall average. The best in class reaches 76%, is climbing into the first quartile, whereas the last in class of the sector reaches only 4 points. Just for understanding the data, the two reinsurers are not part of the scoring, and we show you the score here to make the results of those 8, which we display here, more comparable. And we wanted to point out which is marked in black here, marketing and labeling. Here, our insurance sample only reaches 22% of all possible points. So there is much more room for improvement. Which is better already is the area of materiality, or processes and actions, as well as policies and commitments. But when it comes to insurance products and integrating them into marketing and distribution, then we see that reporting could be more detailed. Next slide. This introduces our next chapter, defining the reporting curriculum. I think this part is very important for stakeholders to understand how they can evaluate if reporting is comprehensive and comparable. Because at the moment we are in a position where EFRAG has not developed yet the sector-specific requirements. They are under development, but within reporting, we have some indicators who could demonstrate or help us as stakeholders to understand if the company has done a proper due diligence process and identified the focus topics. Next slide, to give you the idea of the 4 layers you can take a look at as a stakeholder. Those are sustainability focus, which comprises all information on materiality and strategy, stakeholder inclusiveness, which relates back to the principles of sustainable insurance, value chain reporting, and then the last layer, due diligence and risk assessment. They all form a structured basis, which indicates if the reporting is both comprehensible and complete, and helps you as a stakeholder to make it comparable, or to compare it to other results from a peer group. Next slide, please. And I have to drink a little bit, sorry. I have a cold which doesn't leave me alone for weeks now. Here we see the results on sustainability focus. As I said, this focuses on materiality and strategy and ensures that only the most relevant and strategically important topics are included in the report. And by doing this, this creates a clear and focused basis that makes it possible to present material sustainability aspects in a targeted and in-depth manner. So what do we see here? We see that our companies do quite well. Our needle has gone to the right, but indicating that the insurance sector is not above the GEM all. The results are comparable to the overall average. But we also see that the best in class score is already reaching 87 of all possible points. And the last in score 37. And if you look at distribution of the sample, you see that most of the company are already doing quite well here, with 7 high performers, 2 in mid-range, and only 1 low performer in this area. The next layer, stakeholder inclusiveness. As I said, it's one part of the principles of sustainable insurance. And this is all about stakeholder involvement. And this is important for the companies to be able to contextualize their information according to the need and information requirements of their stakeholders. So we see our insurance sample is slightly above the GEM all sample, 67 points versus 60 points. The best in class already reaches 91% of all points, whereas the last in class score is above the 50% mark, reaching 52%. And that is also reflected in the distribution of our sample, having one ultra high performer and 5 high performers, as well as 4 in the mid-range. Value chain reporting, our third layer. Here we can see that the insurance sector is below the GEM average, which is 51% of all possible points, and the insurance companies only reaching 37% of all points. On the right side, you see a drop down in the numbers with 5 low performers and 2 extreme low performers in this area. Last in class only reaches 3% of all points, whereas best in class has 75% of all points. That shows you the great variety in reporting and reporting quality, which is, again, a very diagnostic symptom of our data, not only for the insurance company, but for the overall sample.
I have one question.
Yes.
How do companies, or especially the low performers, how do they deal with this situation? Do they just say nothing, or do they explain why they don't have the information, or do they give any outlook, or do you have any insights on that?
Yes. So what I can say is, if they give some kind of explanation, we mostly have in our questionnaire the option to say, for example, that the information is to be or directed into another document, which is outside of our scope, which we are looking at, since we have a very narrow scope of reports we accept for sustainability reporting. And we also have the option to say it's not there yet, but it's under development. And then we also want to find out if a time range is already published, or if there is any other additional information. So this is already possible and would also be reflected within the scoring we're doing. So we can assume that most of the companies miss out on certain criteria which we were looking at. So to answer it, they did not give an information.
And especially with regards to the value chain, do you think this picture is the result of missing data coming from the value chain, or what is the main issue here?
This is something we have to really keep in mind when we look at the insurance companies as investors, especially because they can only make decisions based on data on, for example, the sustainability performance of different assets when they have good data. And if you look, for example, at all the webinars we had so far and the reporting scores and the results in details, you can see that we still have a very diverse reporting landscape out there. Information is not distributed evenly. The quality is very dispersed, like we can see it in this example too, reaching from 3 in the worst case to 75 points in the best case. So this makes it really difficult for stakeholders to gain data, to work with the data, and also for insurance companies who rely on data they get from others in order to make decisions.
Thank you.
4th
layer?
Yes, please. The due diligence and risk assessment. So this reporting area shows how well a company recognizes, assesses, and integrates sustainability risks into its strategies. And this is important because it helps users to understand the extent to which the company proactively addresses potential risks and integrates them into their corporate strategy. See that we have an average score of 73% of all possible points, which is slightly above the average of all companies surveyed. The best in class reaches 96% of all points, so 4% away from a full score here. The last in class only 22. But if you look at the distribution, you see again a shift towards the upper level of our spectrum, with 7 companies being either ultra high performer or high performer in this area. Before we come to our spotlight climate, what we can conclude here is that the areas which are supposed to help stakeholders to understand if reporting is complete and focused, and to help them understand the overall context of the reporting, we have areas which are stronger, such as due diligence and risk assessment, as well as stakeholder inclusiveness, and other areas which need more focus, such as value chains, and which are posing different challenges for the insurance company, which we also will meet when we look at our spotlight climate in the next chapter. We chose the spotlight climate because we say that when it comes to climate change, insurers are challenged both as risk managers and as companies, and therefore we thought it's very important to take a look at this chapter or this topic. And the first thing I want to show you is insurance coverage, the damage due to natural hazards 2023 in Germany. I have added, it's a very recent publication here. The 2 covers of the reports where we drew the data. It's the Naturgefahren Report 2024 and the data service to this report 2024. Those 2 reports give you additional information and breakdowns and are highly recommended if you want to understand how those challenges develop within the industry. What we can see here is that climate change affects the industry in many ways. One hand, damages caused by natural hazards resulted in property and motor vehicle insurance costs. And on the left side, you see it grouped for property insurance for residential buildings, household contents, industry, commerce, and agriculture, which is 3.7 billions. And on the right side, you see it for the car insurance sector with 1.9 billion euros in losses due to natural hazards. What we think is important when we were researching for this data is to see, not yet, Claudius, please give me one more second, how it was discussed within the industry. And what they said is that they expect that the expenses are at least doubled by 2050 as a result of climate change. And those damages are not only caused by extreme weathers, but by a growing necessity of all effects which come with climate change. And therefore, the industry says that there are 2 tasks for the industry itself: contribution to combating climate change and the adaptation to the consequences. Adaptation of consequences will be an aspect I will talk about when it comes to resilience, so please keep that in mind at this point of my presentation. Now, Claudius, show us the colorful SDG rainbow. When you look at the topics which are or could be relevant for the insurance sector, you come across the SDGs, which are, according to GDV, for example, very necessary for insurance companies to contribute to. And you can see that 9 out of 10 insurers state that they contribute to the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, as well as to the objectives of the Paris Climate Protection Agreement. So for those outside overarching goals, you see a high commitment, which is expressed through materiality of climate, 100%, 90% to agree to Paris Climate Protection Agreement and to adapt the strategies to this, and 80% committing either to SDG 13, which is climate change, or the SDG 7, 60%, which is all about clean energy and which is also covered by ESRS E1. With that background, let's take a look at the material topics in total on the next slide. Claudius, please. So you can see that the insurance companies, as well as most of the companies in our sample, yellow insurance sector, black gem, all come from the tradition of ESG reporting by focusing very much on climate, 100% say it's material, governance, 100% say it's material, as well as own workforce, 100% say it's material. And if you look at other different topics, you can see some criteria which we can explain by the way our sample is composed. 80% focus on consumers and end users. Keep in mind we had 2 reinsurers in our sample, and then other criteria such as workers in the value chain, biodiversity, affected communities, or pollution, which are sometimes mentioned but not really present as a material topic within the sample. It all averages out on 4.6 of 10 topical areas, which were identified as material in the insurance sample. This is below the overall average of 5.7 topics and has probably to do with sector specifica. We will compare that as soon as we have the final specifications from example EFRAG or the Global Reporting Initiative. For us at the moment, it's really interesting to see which topics we can find more often within different sectors and to share this information with you, especially if you are an insurance company, to compare the results of your materiality analysis with the material spectrum of topics from a peer group. That's the overall result of climate reporting, which you can see now. And you see our insurance sample is above the GEM all sample with 51% of all possible points compared to 45%. The best in class reaches 75% and is in the first quartile, whereas the last in class reaches only 27% and is in the second quartile. On the right side, again, our empirical distribution of the score. And you can see that we have 6 companies which have a solid reporting by either being high performers or being in the mid-range, and 2 promising reports which are in the rising category of our spectrum. To enhance this result further for you, I have picked out 4 different areas to give you some detail. The first area is GHG emissions. The second, I told you, keep it in mind, is resilience. The third is governance on climate. And the fourth is financial effects. Let's start with GHG emissions. When we talk to the companies and they are confronted with their results in GHG emissions, as you can see on the left side here for the insurance sector, having a performance score of 34% and being below the GEM all average, they say, why? We report on our scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, and maybe also give you for scope 2 emissions a breakdown to market and location-based counting. We have a very promising frequency here for our insurance company, disclosure of either scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions we can find for 9 of our 10 companies. But when it comes to more details, then we think, especially for those insurance companies having the role as an investor, it's also important to categorize those scopes by financial and operational control. Only 3 companies do that at the moment. And this distinction from our point of view is particularly important for insurers because it provides insights into the issues that are directly controlled by them, operational, and those they can indirectly influence by their investment, financial. So the second breakdown we thought is very interesting is the breakdown of emissions by criteria such as country, segment, economic activity, or emission category. It's an either and category we are showing the result for, and you see likewise only 3 companies provide information here. We think such a detailing would be valuable for insurers in their role as risk managers and companies because this information allows for the stakeholder a differentiated view of emissions along the value chain and shows where the largest sources of emissions are to be located. Let's take a look at scope 3. And we already pointed out here with a black arrow, which is the most important or surprising category we found. So according to the greenhouse gas protocol, if you report your scope 3 emissions, you are asked to show which of the 15 scope 3 categories you have included into your counting. And you see that the numbers are very small, that only 7 of 15 categories are reported on, and only 5 of them got reported by more than 1 company. Investments are not included. This would comprise the indirect greenhouse gas emissions caused by a company's investment in other companies or projects. To give you more detail, when a company such as an insurance company makes a financial investment, they can show how those investments cause indirect emissions, and they could calculate it within their scope 3 score and also show the development in this category. But as we pointed out, at the moment, we have no category or no company which gives us closer information on this. The second surprising thing on the next slide is employee commuting. When we saw that only 2 companies included this in their scope 3 emissions, we thought, okay, employees, they are within operational control. And we soon thought about, are those home office effects? How is the situation? And we started to do a little bit of research. Next slide, please. And the first number we looked at was the total number of employees within our sample, which is approximately 541,000 employees in total. So we have a huge number of employees who could be considered in commuting. The numbers for the insurance sector of how many are in regularly or partly in home office, they vary greatly from something in the 20% to 40% categories, depending also on the position of the people within the companies. What we also found during our research is what you see on the right side is a study conducted by Allianz, and they have evaluated which vehicle is the most favorite way to go to work. And that's obviously the car with close to 60%. And so we thought, okay, by taking all of this in consideration, we could have expected this number to be higher within the scope 3 emissions. Yes, Claudius?
I have a question regarding this result, employee commuting. I mean, 2 of 10, that's 20%. Where stands the insurance industry compared to other industries when we are talking about scope 3 emissions from employees?
At the moment, it's really surprising. We found that in all of the sector results we have done so far, that scope 3 emissions are distributed vary unevenly, even within one sector. And for Scope 3 emission, that means that it's really difficult to compare the height of Scope 3 emissions, because if you have different aspects which are considered and categories which are left out, you have no good level for comparing. You just have an absolute number, which is the result of different calculation approaches. So we will see how this will develop. If you look into the GHG protocol, companies are supposed to also do a materiality assessment of those 15 categories. I have in mind a good example of BASF showing how they did this materiality assessment for the 15 categories and how they came to the conclusion what they included. So even though their result would not be comparable to a competitor or another type of peer, we still would have a good idea on why they came to a conclusion to integrate different categories. And that would help us as stakeholders to understand why they did it. If we don't have any information at all, or only the categories named, we do not have any other information to help us to understand the company's decision.
Great, thank you.
I think what I would like to add here is that this is something which I think is really important for the whole discussion on sustainability reporting and to understand what makes a high quality report. So you have to understand that you have to show the sources on which you make your decisions, as well as to give proof or to enhance performance in the areas of which you say they are material for you. If you do this, you already have a good guidance to what makes a high quality reporting, because these are information which helps stakeholders to understand your results and your reporting better. As well, it gives you the possibility, according to the measure to manage principle, as I said in the beginning of this presentation, to understand where you might enhance your resilience or to improve your overall strategies. Resilience is a good to the next topic, the resilience reporting. Resilience analysis is a very important component of sustainability reporting, especially for the insurance companies that have to take into consideration long-term risks, as I showed you with the numbers before, to damages due to climate hazards, but also when it comes to prepare for what is still coming, when we see that the insurance sector is expecting to at least double those damages until the year 2050. And when it comes to reporting, we see that only 6 of the 10 companies within the insurance company industry report on resilience analysis, reaching a score of 59%, which is quite above GEM all. So if they do it quite well. And you can see the number of companies disclosing different details on their analysis, that for the first block, it's not only enough to give information on that you did a resilience analysis, which 6 companies did, but also to give closer information on the scope and on the results of your analysis. The second block of numbers shows you if there are more details on how this was evaluated, especially in terms of risks and opportunities on financial performance and position. 4 companies give information on this, or the identification of strategies which are impacted by climate risks and opportunities for companies, as well as the adoption of business strategies, which is again to be found in 5 company reportings. Next topic, governance on climate. Sorry. We chose governance on climate because an effective governance structure ensures that climate-related risks and opportunities are taken into account at the highest corporate levels and integrated into strategy and planning, as well as in performance assessment. And you see that the average performance score in this area is 41, which is just below the overall average of 43 points of all companies analyzed. And we will see that there are still some areas which can highly be improved in terms of frequency. So we have a high frequency on information processes for the management board. 9 of 10 companies report on this. But when it comes to consideration of climate-related issues into strategy and planning, or the integration of climate-related targets into key performance indicators, or details on the frequency of information for which the management board is informed about climate-related topics to monitor them, you see that the frequency drops from 7 companies to the lowest, which is 3 companies providing such an information. So when it comes to governance on climate, we think that there are still some areas for the insurance sample to improve, especially in the light of increasing regulatory requirements and growing investor and customer expectations, that this is an area where they can show more about governance, more about their due diligence in this area. Last but not least, the financial effects. The results here are quite low. 20% of all possible points were reached by our insurance sector compared to 15% for GEM All. And this is something we see that is very difficult in many areas of sustainability reporting for the companies. It goes back to that we go away from CSR reporting, corporate social responsibility reporting, or ESG reporting, environmental social governance reporting, to the triple bottom line approach, which puts together environmental, social, and economic the economic fields and connects them. And we see that this is in reporting quite new. So for the risk perspectives, we have a reporting on financial impacts on climate risks when it comes to assets and physical risks, which is already high. So it shows that physical risks on assets are already something which the sample is very aware of. But when it comes to reporting on financial aspects such as revenue, net revenues, transition risks, and market opportunities, we find significant gaps. And remember, transition risks, when it comes to what we learned before with the industry saying to 2050, they will have a transition phase, which leads to a doubling in the damages for only natural hazard caused damages. This is something which should be included more present into the reporting. Claudius, do we have any questions so far? If not, I would come to my overall conclusion.
No further questions at the moment.
So I want to finish off this presentation on the insurance sector with the overall ESRS readiness score on the next slide, Claudius. Because what we did this year was to integrate all of ESRS into our methodology. So we are able to only draw the data which comes from those sources and to calculate a compliance score. And you see that this compliance score for the insurance industry reaches 45% compared to 41% in GEM All. The best in class already has a compliance score of 73%, whereas the last in class only reaches 22%. If you look at the empirical distribution of performance scores here, you see that most of them are in the mid-range, which means depending on when they have to publish their first ESRS aligned report, there is a lot to do. and time is running. The next reports will be published in only a few months, and we are really already looking forward to see or to observe what is developing, how reporting will change, and also how our data will change in this way. And this leads to the last chart, or do we have a question?
Now we have one question. The 45% compared to other industries, what does it mean for the insurance industry? Is that in the mid-range or midfield or at the top or more the bottom?
The insurance sector is not on the bottom, but it's also not on the top. So we have looked at different sectors so far, which is engineering, energy, automotive, pharma, chemistry, and banking. And we can see that they are in the midfield of all of our ESRS compliance scores. So nothing special about the results. Yeah. The conclusion is that we have the experience from our data and trying to contextualize the data in the light of sector specifics, which we try to do in this presentation, that we have to keep in mind that insurance companies play a central role in society as risk managers, investors, and companies. And this double role or triple responsibilities, depending on how you look at this, goes beyond providing insurance cover by policies, but also touches their investment strategies. And we also realize that for this sector to enhance the results in investment, they are dependent on data from other companies, which has to improve, which has to give them a better basis for understanding. And but we see that also they have this challenge. They have challenges themselves by setting a good example of what kind of reporting they need to have by doing it themselves.
Thank you, Ariane. So we reached the end of today's webinar. On the 7th of November, we're gonna have the next webinar providing insights into the banking sector. We will be happy if you're gonna join us. As usual, we're gonna provide the presentation as well as the recording of the webinar on the Global ESG Monitor website. Feel free to download the presentation, the slides. And if you have any follow-up questions, of course, also feel free to contact us afterwards.
Or if you need more insights into our data, that's also possible. We are happy to provide more insights.
Thank you for today and have a good week.
Thank you and have a good week. Bye-bye.